They say there's a breaking point for everyone, a moment when love turns to rage, when patience dissolves into obsession, and when even the quietest person becomes capable of something unthinkable. No one wakes up one day and decides to cross that line. It happens slowly, like a candle burning to its end, until all that's left is smoke and darkness. Nia Holloway wasn't reckless. She wasn't dangerous. She was a woman who believed in love, in trust, in the promise of shared dreams. But in the end, she became the headline no one saw coming. He made her believe she was his everything. And then he took everything from her. What makes someone go from waiting for justice to becoming it? This is not the kind of story where you can easily pick a side. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. And by the end, you'll find yourself wondering if you'd have done anything differently. Some called her victim. Others called her a monster. But the truth? That's where it gets complicated. Because not everyone forgives. And some stories don't end quietly. Welcome to Ruthless Realities. I thank you, my viewers, most especially my subscribers. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Nia Holloway was no stranger to resilience. A nurse who built her life one shift at a time, she had spent decades caring for others, often at the expense of herself. But beneath the calm professionalism and quiet strength was a woman who had endured her own kind of pain. Her story wasn't just one achievement. It was one of survival. After a painful divorce that left her questioning her worth, she poured herself into her work, spending long nights in hospital wards and early mornings comforting patients in recovery. The years passed, and while her career flourished, her personal life remained quiet, lonely, even. Friends urged her to put herself out there again, but Nia wasn't looking for excitement. She just wanted someone to share life's simple moments with. She wasn't weak. Far from it. Nia was compassionate, but cautious. She could stitch a wound with precision, but the scars left by betrayal didn't heal so easily. She had built her savings bit by bit, taking on extra shifts to secure a future she could be proud of. And though she was wise with her finances, her heart was another matter. Then came Leon Maddox. Leon was everything Nia thought she needed, and everything you wanted her to believe. Charismatic and attentive, he had a way of making anyone feel like the center of his universe. He didn't rush conversations or make grand declarations. He moved with ease, like someone who belonged in your life before you even realized it. He had mastered his craft. Leon could read people like a book, finding the pages where their fears and hopes were written. He didn't make you doubt him. He made you doubt yourself. Leon told Nia he was a widower, a man who had lost the love of his life in a tragic accident. He spoke of how he thought his heart was irreparably broken until he met her. His story didn't come in one sweeping confession. It was layered, revealed bit by bit over weeks. Each detail felt personal, intimate. He wasn't just painting a picture. He was inviting her into it. He had a reason for every scar, a story for every setback. And Nia believed him, because the pain he described was one she understood all too well. But Leon Maddox wasn't grieving. He was hunting. He had learned from a young age that survival meant staying 2 steps ahead of everyone else. He grew up in a world where charm was currency, and deceit was the only way to get what you wanted. And while some might argue that Leon was shaped by his circumstances, he made a choice long ago. He chose to see people as opportunities. His lifestyle was funded by manipulation and betrayal. Leon didn't just scam women. He studied them. He knew how to create trust out of thin air and how to make affection feel like an anchor. He used multiple aliases, each with a backstory carefully crafted to fit the women he targeted. A grieving husband, a retired entrepreneur, a man searching for something real. But behind the screens and stage photos, Leon was living extravagantly. Beachfront villas, expensive suits, and lavish parties. His wealth wasn't built from hard work. It came from the tears and shattered dreams of women who had believed his lies. Nia first saw his profile during a quiet evening after a long shift. She had just put on her favorite playlist and sunk into the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly on her phone. A mutual friend had commented on a post from a man named Leon, which brought his profile onto her feed. His profile photo wasn't showy or suspicious, just a candid shot of him standing by a small lake with a soft smile. It looked authentic. not like the polished images from dating profiles designed to impress. She hesitated before clicking. She wasn't one to trust easily, but something about the way his profile read was different. He wrote about finding peace in quiet moments and appreciating life's simple joys. His captions were thoughtful, as though each post was more of a conversation than a boast. Her finger hovered over the Add Friend button before she finally pressed it, telling herself it was harmless. Moments later, a message popped up. "Hey, Nia, I saw that we have a few friends in common. Your work in nursing seems so admirable. It takes a special person to do what you do every day." It was short but respectful. It wasn't filled with over-the-top compliments. Instead, it felt intentional, as though he was genuinely impressed by her life, rather than trying to impress her. Nia replied cautiously at first, offering polite answers. But Leon didn't push. He asked thoughtful questions about what made her choose nursing, what book she was reading, and whether she'd always loved working in healthcare. His messages arrived like little beams of light in her inbox, and soon she found herself checking her phone during breaks, hoping for that familiar notification. The more they spoke, the more Leon seemed to reflect exactly what Nia had been missing. He shared stories of his late wife, describing her as his anchor. He talked about how he used to take long walks to clear his mind, finding solace in the sound of the waves near his home. He sent pictures that felt intimate but not staged, a cup of coffee on his windowsill, a blurred photo of the sunset. He said reminded him of their talks. Nia wasn't used to someone listening like that, someone who wanted to know her beyond surface-level details. When they finally moved from messaging to a video call, she felt a nervous flutter in her chest. She had wondered whether his voice would match his words. And when she heard him, it felt like stepping into a conversation they'd been having for years. His voice was warm, steady. He laughed easily, but didn't interrupt. He told her about his hopes for the future. Simple dreams like planting a garden or finding a partner to share slow mornings and lazy Sundays. For the first time in years, Nia felt seen. She felt chosen. But while Nia was opening her heart, Leon was counting the steps it would take to shatter it. What began as an innocent exchange of messages blossomed into something that felt real, something that felt like love. Leon Maddox knew exactly how to pace the relationship, never rushing, never overstepping too soon. He wove a story as delicate as silk, but as binding as chains. Leon wasn't reckless. He was calculated, patient. His approach wasn't filled with grand gestures, but small, meaningful moments. He talked about their future in a way that made it sound tangible, like something she could almost reach out and touch. He didn't just tell Nia what she wanted to hear. He made her believe that she had finally found someone who wanted to build a life with her. Months passed. Their night calls stretched into the early morning. Messages filled with promises of shared adventures, and quiet mornings together became part of her daily life. He'd send her texts like, "One day, I'll wake up to your smile instead of just your messages." Nia's heart swelled with hope. For the first time in years, she felt like someone truly saw her, cared for her. Her friends noticed a change. Her eyes seemed brighter, and she hummed to herself while she cooked dinner alone. She didn't dare tell them yet, though this was hers, a secret joy she held close, afraid that speaking it aloud might break the spell. But the fantasy Leon created wasn't built to last. It was designed to entangle. It started in a little. Leon mentioned how his business had taken a sudden hit, a shipment delayed, a contract falling through. His voice was steady, but there was a tinge of worry behind his words. Nia listened, concerned but not alarmed. Then came the first request. Not for much, just a loan to keep things afloat until his accounts cleared. Nia hesitated. She wasn't naive about money, but Leon reassured her. "I hate asking you for this, but I wouldn't if I had another choice. It's temporary. I promise." She sent a small amount, reasoning that it was just a gesture, to help him in a difficult time. And after all, this wasn't a stranger. This was someone who had earned her trust, someone who made her feel understood. But one request became two. Two became four. Each time, his story grew more urgent. A delayed payment, a legal setback, an unexpected emergency. Leon always found the right words to calm her fears. "Once this is over, everything will fall into place. We'll have the life we've been dreaming about." And Nia believed him because she wanted to believe him. Love does that. It fills in the gaps, silences the doubts, and turns whispers of suspicion into background noise. Bit by bit, her savings dwindled. At first, she barely noticed the totals. But soon, she was moving money between accounts, convincing herself it was temporary, that Leon would pay her back, just as he said he would. $87,000. That's how much she gave him. Her future, her dreams, everything she had worked for. To her, it wasn't just money. It was trust, a belief in the life they had spoken about late into the night. But to Leon, she was a target. Another woman who believed in his lies. Another stepping stone in his carefully crafted lifestyle. And when he had taken everything she had to give, he disappeared. The text stopped. The phone calls never came. Nia's messages went unanswered, until one day, her phone buzzed with a hollow silence. His number was disconnected. His social media accounts were gone. And so, this man who had successfully scammed many women, some driven to depression and isolation, thought he would go scot-free forever. He thought his trail of broken hearts and stolen savings would never catch up to him. But this time, he made the biggest mistake of his life. He had scammed the wrong woman. He took her savings, all $87,000, and vanished. Nia had truly and genuinely loved him. But to Leon, she was nothing more than another opportunity. Someone he could take advantage of and discard. He succeeded with his scam. He ghosted her without a second thought, expecting her to fade into the background like the others. But Nia wasn't like the others. Nia Holloway sat alone in the dim light of her living room, her phone still clutched in her hand, as though another message from Leon would suddenly appear. But there was nothing, just the deafening silence of an empty inbox. The weight of the truth pressed down on her, suffocating and relentless. She replayed every conversation in her mind, every smile she had shared with him through that small screen. It was all a lie. The man she had trusted, the man she thought understood her heart, had been nothing more than a thief cloaked in tenderness. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Each night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, questions swirling through her mind like a storm. How could I have fallen for this? How did I not see it? The guilt gnawed at her, a quiet, merciless whisper that told her she should have known better. She began avoiding her friends, turning down invitations. How could she explain this? How could she face anyone knowing she had handed over not just her money, but her trust? The bright future she had saved for, the security she had spent years building. It was all gone. Days blurred into nights, and her world felt smaller with each passing hour. The walls of her home, once a place of comfort, now felt like a prison. In her desperation, Nia reached out for help. She gathered every piece of evidence she had, screenshots of messages, transaction records, and photos Leon had sent. She walked into the police station, clinging to the hope that someone, anyone, would see how much she had lost. The officer behind the desk glanced over her documents with a tired expression. When he spoke, his voice was detached, almost rehearsed. "Ma'am, these kinds of cases are complicated. Scammers like this often use fake identities and offshore accounts. It's hard to trace them. We'll file the report, but there's not much we can do." Nia felt her heart sink. The system that was supposed to protect people like her felt indifferent, mechanical. Her story was brushed aside, filed away with countless others labeled as unsolvable. But what Leon didn't know was that not everyone stays quiet. Nia had reported the case, but after a month passed with no progress, she realized she wasn't alone in her pain. In her search for answers, she stumbled across an online support group for victims of romance scams. She wasn't sure what she was looking for when she joined. Maybe comfort, maybe understanding. What she found was a mirror of her own devastation. Post after post told stories of women who had trusted too deeply and paid the price. And as she read, one name kept appearing. Leon Maddox, or at least a man who went by that name. Nia's confusion turned into clarity, her guilt into resolve. She saw how many lives he had ruined, how many women had handed over their savings, their dreams, only to be left shattered. For some, the pain was so unbearable that it led them into isolation, depression, even thoughts of ending their own lives. Leon wasn't just a scammer. He was a predator. But Nia wasn't like the others. She couldn't sit back and watch his trail of destruction continue. She had lost nearly everything. But there was one thing she hadn't lost: her will to fight. That moment became a turning point. Instead of letting the shame bury her, Nia stood up, steadied herself, and resolved to take matters into her own hands. She didn't know how yet, but she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. Nia Holloway had always believed in hard work, in earning her place in the world through grit and sacrifice. But Leon Maddox had taken the fruit of her labor and turned it into ashes. She had lost $87,000, her life savings. But she hadn't lost her determination. Her house, once a symbol of her independence, began to feel like a reminder of what she had lost. The walls seemed to echo with every painful thought, every unanswered question. She knew she couldn't stay trapped in her despair. She had tried the legal route. She had trusted the authorities. But they had given her nothing but a paper file and empty reassurances. That's when she made a decision most people wouldn't dare to consider. She would take control. And to do that, she needed help. Nia sold the last of what she could. The spare car she no longer needed. Family heirlooms she once swore she'd keep forever. And even some of her most cherished furniture. She pulled together what little she had left and hired a private investigator, a man who had made a career of finding the unfindable. The investigator wasn't just some amateur sleuth. He was meticulous, patient, and resourceful. Together, they began piecing together a puzzle that Leon thought he had scattered too far for anyone to solve. Leon had been careful, changing his name, deleting his old accounts. But no one disappears without leaving a trace. There were still fragments of his digital life that hadn't been erased. Social media comments that seemed innocent enough but hinted at locations, a tag post that had slipped through his tight grip on privacy, and most of all, his pattern. One that only became clear when someone was determined enough to follow every breadcrumb. Weeks turned into months as they mapped out his movements, tracking where he'd been, and where he might be now. Then there was a breakthrough. A photo, posted by an acquaintance, showing a familiar silhouette in the background. It was unmistakable. Leon Maddox, standing on a beach, drink in hand, wearing designer clothes, paid for with stolen dreams. The photo was taken on an exclusive island in Hawaii, a place that boasted beachfront villas, luxury restaurants, and the kind of privacy only money could buy. Nia stared at the image, her heart pounding in her chest. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was thriving. He was living extravagantly on the sweat of women who had only ever wanted to love him. He wasn't thinking about the damage he had caused. He wasn't wondering if any of the women he had scammed were okay. He didn't care if they were struggling to pay their bills, or if his betrayal had led them to dark places. Nia wiped away tears as she imagined how many women had cried the same way she was crying now. Women who had been left broken, isolated, and desperate. And there Leon was, throwing parties, surrounded by drinks and laughter, basking in a life that wasn't his to live. Her sorrow was no longer just about her own pain. It became something sharper, something harder. Leon had taken everything from her, but she wasn't there to ask for it back. Nia had found a man who ruined her life, living in paradise, funded by the misery of others, and she wasn't there to ask for an apology. Nia Holloway arrived on the island with nothing but a small suitcase and a heart full of determination. The moment she stepped off the plane, the salty breeze felt different. Not like a welcome, but like a challenge. She wasn't here to relax or take in the tropical views. She was here for him. Dressed in simple, casual clothes, Nia blended in among the tourists, her calm exterior hiding the storm within. She checked into a modest hotel, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid suspicion. For 2 days, she kept her distance, watching him from afar like a shadow. Leon Maddox moved through life as though he were untouchable. She watched him saunter to the lobby of his beachfront villa, surrounded by people laughing at his every joke. There was no remorse in his eyes, just the smug confidence of a man who believed he had outsmarted everyone. At night, the lights from his villa blazed as music, and laughter poured out into the darkness. Champagne glasses clinked, and partygoers danced beneath the stars. Nia sat across the beach in silence, unseen and unnoticed. The second night, the party lasted well past midnight. Leon stumbled home alone, his steps slow and uneven as he let out a carefree laugh at nothing in particular. He had no idea that someone was watching. Someone who wasn't there to toast his success, but to witness his fall. When the morning sun began to rise, its soft golden rays spilled over the horizon and cast light on his villa. The air was thick with the scent of salt and early dew as Leon groaned awake, rubbing his temples, his body weighed down by the consequences of excess. He shuffled to the door, squinting at the light that streamed through the windows. He reached for the handle without thinking, expecting nothing more than the morning air. When the door swung open, he froze. There she was, Nia Holloway, standing tall, her face calm, but her eyes holding a depth of pain that could pierce through any facade. For a second, Leon didn't move. His mind scrambled to make sense of what he was seeing. He blinked, as though hoping she'd vanish like a bad dream. When she didn't, he stammered, "W, who are you?" Nia's voice was steady but cold. "You don't even remember me?" she asked, her words sharp enough to cut through the haze of his hangover. "The woman whose heart you stole, whose life you destroyed." Leon's expression shifted. Confusion gave way to recognition, then panic. He raised a hand, as though trying to wave away the gravity of the moment. "Look," he began, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I can explain. Let's just sit down, okay? I'll make things right. I'll get you your money back." Nia didn't flinch. "You think I'm here for money?" she asked, her voice low but unwavering. Leon's smile faltered. The room felt smaller as her words settled between them. He took a step back, but there was nowhere left to run. But Nia wasn't there for the money. She was there to take back her dignity, and she believed there was only one way to do that. The morning air was still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. For a moment, there was only silence. Two people standing face to face, their shared history written in betrayal and loss. Then the silence was shattered. The crack of a single gunshot echoed across the quiet beachside, sharp and unforgiving. Birds scattered from the treetops. The sound rippled out, as though the universe itself couldn't ignore what had just happened. Leon Maddox staggered, his eyes wide in shock. His hands reached instinctively toward his chest, but it was too late. He collapsed to the floor, his life slipping away in the very place where he had basked in stolen luxury. Nia Holloway stood frozen, the gun still in her trembling hands. Time seemed to slow as she stared at the man she had once trusted, now lying lifeless before her. She felt the weight of what she had done settle over her like an unbearable burden. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply stood there, as if trying to comprehend the path that had brought her to this moment. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, and now, the irreversible act. The distant hum of sirens began to grow louder, cutting through the stillness like a warning. Neighbors had heard the gunshot. Calls had been made. And before long, police cars arrived, their lights flashing red and blue against the pale morning sky. Nia didn't run. She didn't argue. When the officers reached her, she placed the gun on the ground and raised her shaking hands. In the days that followed, the story of Nia Holloway and Leon Maddox spread like wildfire. The courtroom was packed during her trial. Friends and family lined the benches, trying to capture every moment of what was quickly becoming one of the most polarizing cases in recent memory. Some people saw Nia as a hero, someone who had endured unspeakable cruelty and decided to fight back. To them, she wasn't just another victim. She was a woman who had taken back her power after being stripped of everything she had. Others saw her differently. They believed that no matter how much pain Leon had caused, taking a life was unforgivable. They called it cold-blooded murder, a tragic escalation of anger and grief. Throughout the trial, Nia sat quietly, her face calm but haunted. She didn't plead for sympathy, nor did she try to justify her actions in the way people expected. She told her story as it was, raw, painful, and unembellished. The world watched as the jury weighed justice against morality. And as Nia's fate hung in the balance, the question remained. When someone takes everything from you, how far is too far when you try to take it back? The courtroom fell silent as the judge delivered the verdict. Nia Holloway was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by murmurs of shock and debate. Some felt justice had been served. Others saw the sentence as another betrayal, a system punishing someone who had already lost everything. As Nia was led away, she didn't cry. She didn't protest. She walked with her head held high, as though she had accepted the weight of what she had done long before the gavel struck. But outside the courtroom, the questions continued to echo. Was this justice, or just a harsh reminder of what grief and betrayal can drive a person to do? Nia's story became a symbol of something larger than one tragic moment. It became a reflection of the hidden cost of scams, losses that go beyond dollars and cents. The betrayal of trust, the shattering of dreams, and the destruction of self-worth can leave scars deeper than any wound. Many of Leon's victims came forward after Nia's trial, sharing their stories of how his lies had ruined their lives. Some had fallen into depression, unable to rebuild. Others lost their homes, their savings, and their sense of identity. For them, Nia wasn't just a criminal. She was the embodiment of the rage and helplessness they had felt but never acted upon. But where does the line between victim and perpetrator blur? Was Nia simply someone who had reached her breaking point, a victim pushed to the edge? Or had she chosen to become something more, a vigilante who believed justice was hers to take? She was once seen as a victim of deception. Now she's seen as a cautionary tale about what happens when you push someone too far. Her story forces us to ask difficult questions. How far would you go if someone took everything from you? Would you forgive, or would you fight back? And at what cost? Nia's actions sparked conversations that lingered long after the headlines faded. Some say she deserved mercy, that her crime was born from pain, not malice. Others believe the law must remain unyielding, regardless of circumstance. But no matter where one stands, one truth remains. There are people in this world who take advantage of the lonely and the vulnerable, preying on a desire for love and connection. And when trust is betrayed so deeply, the aftermath can be devastating, even deadly. Nia's story isn't just about one woman's choice. It's a reminder of the silent battles fought by those who have been wronged, battles not always seen by the world, but battles that can consume someone from the inside out. In the end, Nia Holloway became more than just a headline. She became a question, one that asks us all, what would you have done in her place? Online romance scams are not rare tragedies. They're a growing crisis. According to reports, victims in the U.S. alone lose over $1 billion each year to scammers who prey on vulnerability and the need for connection. But beyond the financial loss, the emotional damage is often far worse. Lives unravel. Self-esteem is shattered. Dreams of a better future are turned into nightmares. Stories like Nia's are not isolated. Women from all walks of life, doctors, teachers, stay-at-home mothers, have been deceived by people they trusted. Some lose their homes, others their families. And for some, the emotional weight becomes unbearable. But the signs are often there, hidden behind charming words and calculated gestures. Warning signs and preventative tips. Be wary of anyone who avoids meeting in person or video calls for long periods. Scammers often share elaborate but unverifiable stories about sudden tragedies or financial setbacks. Requests for money, no matter how small, should always raise a red flag, especially when wrapped in emotional appeals. Never share personal or financial details with someone you've only met online. Education and vigilance are the first lines of defense against predators like Leon Maddox. Yet even with all the warnings in the world, loneliness and the desire for connection can make anyone vulnerable. Nia Holloway's legacy remains a source of debate. Some see her as a tragic hero, a woman who was wronged and acted out of desperation. To them, she is a cautionary figure, but also a symbol of empowerment for those who feel powerless. Others view her story through a harsher lens, seeing her as someone who let rage dictate her actions, crossing the line from victim to criminal. But one thing is certain. Her story forced people to confront the reality of online manipulation and the devastating consequences of emotional betrayal. Emotional betrayal can be just as destructive as physical violence. Trust, when broken, can leave scars that are invisible to the eye but linger in the soul. Nia's story forces us to look inward and ask, what would I have done? When someone takes everything from you, not just your savings, but your dignity, how far would you go to reclaim what was lost? As we reflect on Nia's choices, we remember that her story is not unique. It's a reminder of the dangers that lurk behind the comforting glow of a screen. For those who want to learn more and protect themselves, stay tuned. In our next episode, we'll dive into more real-life cases of betrayal, manipulation, and survival. If you've ever had a similar experience, share your thoughts in the comments. Let your story be heard. You never know who might find strength in it. Trust can be a powerful thing, but when it's broken, it can leave scars that never heal. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss our next video. Trust, betrayal, and justice. This is Ruthless Realities. Until next time.